I am the product manager for the API Developer Portal, and I'll be running through things that are new in version 3.0 today. So let me get started. I'll just take the ball from Mary, and I'll start at the top. So what's new in the Portal 3.0 release? We've got a few things I want to go through stepwise. 2 through 6 are all the new features or the major new features we're introducing. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about the upgrade process and then give you guys some time to do some Q&A with me as well. So what's new in Portal 3.0? The key feature that we brought in this time is API monetization. That's a monetization per hit as well as recurring fees per month based on account plans and API plans. The most common thing that we've talked to a lot of our customers about, the most common thing that they will monetize is data APIs. So getting those databases, the real value data out to your customer base, having them create new applications to expose that data is really where that monetization comes from. And I'll talk a little bit about how we enable that with Portal 3.0. Once we publish those APIs, we've also got an API catalog this time around. So being able to automatically publish that API and have it exposed through the catalog so that developers, when they're signing up, for example, will be able to browse that catalog, see what's available, also see what plans are available and how they're monetized if you're doing monetization, and be able to make good decisions when they register for the portal, as well as they're using the portal, how they might want to migrate from a non-monetized plan that gives them minimal access to something with much more bandwidth, much more rights to use your APIs. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about localization and SSO support as well. Starting with monetization, we've actually started on this track in 2.6. So back in Portal 2.6, we introduced the idea of packages, which is really using the account plan to create bundles of APIs. Those bundles are what we called API grouping, so the ability to take any number of APIs that share the same EULA and be able to group them into a group, and then through the packages, assign them to an account plan. So here's a good example from the Weather Underground. They have 3 account plans, the Stratus plan, the Cumulus plan, the Anvil plan, and each of those plans is composed of a group of APIs. So for each plan, you would get access to, for example, the Stratus plan, 6 APIs, and then another 6 APIs with the Cumulus plan, another 6 APIs with the Anvil plan. So that's the kind of thing that we allowed you to get done in 2.6. With 3.0, what we're doing is we're introducing 2 things. Number one, being able to add those data APIs into that list of APIs that you can now manage. And number 2, being able to actually assign monetized values, either directly to the API on a per API hit basis or as monthly pricing. So as you'll see down below, you see the developer drizzle shower downpour. Those would correspond to our API plan. So being able to charge a monthly price and on a recurring basis for access to greater calls, greater quota, greater rate limit is what they're monetizing here. The way that we do this is in Portal 3.0, we've introduced a new entry under analytics called the Revenue Planner. And this simplifies the ability to create those monetized entities and update them over time. Out of the box, we provide integration with Recurly, which is a SaaS-based billing engine. I'll talk a little bit more about that. All of those entities that you monetize here will automatically get pushed into that billing engine, and all the values you've assigned will automatically get sent down as well. So what we've allowed you to do is monetize in 3 ways this time out. One is per registration. So everyone who registers on the portal in this example would get charged a $2 one-time fee. And we also allow you to predict how many organizations do you think you'll start with. Maybe you'll run a hackathon, maybe you'll do some advertising. So in month 1, you might pick up, in this case, 35 different developer organizations signing up for your portal to begin with. There's also a % growth in there as well. So you can predict what that would look like over time. So if I got 35 organizations my first month and I might have a 10% growth, based on that going out over time, you can predict through our revenue planner how much money you could generate on a quarterly or a yearly basis. That's just for registrations. The next step down is our account plans. The account plan is generally used to provide access to a greater number of APIs. So in this case, typically we might have a one-time setup fee to move to, say, a gold plan or a platinum plan or a silver plan or what have you. But typically we also have a recurring monthly fee, say $10, $20, $30 a month, that grants you that access to that greater number of APIs. Typically, fees per hit aren't assigned here in the account plan. They can be, but they're not typically done. So in this case, for the gold plan, for example, there might be a $100 one-time setup fee and a $30 recurring fee. And out of those 35 organizations that signed up, we could say 5 of them accepted the gold plan right off the bat. And again, I could put in a % growth there to predict that model over time. And finally, down below, we have a monthly API plan fees as well. So the API plan is typically used for when you're moving between dev, test, and production. So a dev plan would not be monetized. Typically, it would be a free plan, but the production plan, maybe even the test plan, might be monetized. In this case, we see a production plan that has a one-time fee of $10 per month, no recurring fee, but here's where we typically see, in a best practices model, a fee per hit. So for every time you hit an API in your production instance, it might charge you, in this case, 1/10 of a penny or 1/100th of a penny, or maybe even a 1/10,000th of a penny or something along those lines. And that would add up. You can stick in your value for average hits. You can calculate average hits, again, from our analytics looking at API reports. You can sum up the number of hits per month and get an average and plug that in here. So if you're averaging, say, 100,000 hits per month and you're charging 1/1000th of a penny, you might be generating $100 for every application that's in production. So we list the number of applications under the app APIs, and again, you could put in your growth as well here. So by filling in these fields and making some predictions and maybe even going back into your analytics to give you good numbers that you could use here, you can sum up where you might get to using our generate report. The generate report by default generates it on a quarterly basis, so every 3 months. You'll be able to see how much revenue you can generate for registrations versus account plans versus API plans, and then come to a total revenue as well. And you can play with those numbers. You can do some what-if scenarios. You can estimate what kind of organizations you might get signing up. You can change your % gross. You can change your values for each of the fees per hit or recurring fees until you get to a model that you believe is accurate or something you want to shoot for. At that point, we've got an Apply to Plans button. Once you press that Apply to Plans button, what will happen is we will generate all of these entities within the billing engine. We'll send all of those account plans that you created, all those API plans you created, and the one-time registration fee. We'll create all those entities within the billing engine. We'll update them with all the values, and the billing engine will now be able to do all the tallying for us. So we rely on the billing engine to make do all the multiplication, do all the adding, and then it's just going to ship back to the portal that sum for each of those developers. And we'll present that as an invoice using a template that we've built out in the portal so that the developer can see their invoice on a monthly basis, and you as the owner can also go in and have a look at how your organizations are generating money as well. So you can see their invoices as well. If in case there's any discrepancies, you can match your invoice against theirs. I mentioned before that out of the box we have a relationship with Recurly, Recurly.com. It's a SaaS-based billing engine. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward, very easy to sign up. All they need is an email account from you, and they immediately give you a developer account, which is basically just your company or your name, .recurly.com. And that you need to go ahead and plug into the portal. There's a setup for the portal that will walk you through that entire process. Once you set that up, you now have the ability to communicate via that account plan, or the revenue planner, down to Recurly and create all those entities and all that billing for you. So very quick and easy to sign up for an account and make that integration work for you. Once you've got to the point where you want to go live and you actually want to start the billing, Recurly will charge you a fee. So typically it's a credit card billing that they offer, but you can also use invoicing as well. There's different price points for each of those. And of course they'll take a cut of the transaction as well. We have some partner terms with them. They are currently working on that. I haven't got the final numbers for that, but our numbers will be much better than the ones that they list currently, and these are their list prices that they show today. So if you want to go with Recurly, that's perfectly possible. If you already have a billing engine that you'd rather work with, also possible, we have a connector, a Java-based connector that works between the portal and your engine. All we're looking for is to communicate via APIs, as long as your billing engine is able to support both recurring fees and one-time fees and has some way of sending messages back, either through webhooks or some other kind of mechanism where we can understand that things have been done within the billing engine, so we can send a message or display a message within the portal when things get done. That's perfectly fine. So we can integrate to just about any modern billing engine. So let's move on and talk a little bit about data APIs. As I mentioned, the most common scenario for monetizing the API directly is by exposing the valuable data, proprietary data that you have within your organization. Now, most technical architects would say I would never expose a database directly, and that's got some very good reasons behind it. Obviously, you don't want people writing into that database, destroying your data model. Hitting the database directly can cause quite a big load on that database as well. So there are some instances where you wouldn't want to do this. As our first go-to-market iteration of this data API, what we've done is create this in a read-only mode only. So this is very much for a data.gov, sort of open data kind of initiative where you're just giving people read access to that data. That is much more restrictive. It also allows you to get around the fact that, most ethical architects would build out an infrastructure or an application or some kind of business logic on the front end before you can get at that database. And that's, of course, going to require resources, going to require time, going to require your IT department to get involved. And that can be a long and involved process, and this is really a way of shortcutting that. Which can be very, very beneficial in the short term for getting your developers up and running much more quickly. So with that said, how do we go about doing this? This is just another option on our Publish API from Portal wizard, and you just choose to either publish a regular API, as you usually do, or you can publish a data API. If you select the Publish the Data API, we pop up a wizard that now has a new tab called the Data Explorer. What we expect is that you've already on the gateway created a connection to that database. Once that data source has been loaded in, we'll then display a list of those data sources here within the portal. So this allows your API owner to go ahead and choose their database or whatever they want to expose from here. As long as it's a JDBC-enabled data source, we can load it in here. So we're expecting mainly SQL databases. We have upcoming an assertion for NoSQL databases. We'll be leveraging that in a future release to access NoSQL in the same way that we're doing with SQL databases this time around. So choosing a data source from here will then load in all of the tables that are available within that data source. You can then go ahead and select one of those tables, and you can select any elements within that table. So here we only have one, it's been selected here, but if you have multiple, you can choose which ones you want to expose out of that table. You can also select the format for it. Typically, we're doing mobile development, so typically JSON is required here, but we can also use XML as well. And finally, we want to choose all of the metadata within the table. We'll be using the metadata to automatically generate a WADL file for you, so we can automatically generate that interactive documentation on the portal for you. There's no need to go ahead and generate your own WADL file in order to create that interactive documentation. Finally, you'll hit the Execute Query button, and that will actually call out to that data source, access that table, and return the information in your selected format. So this is really just a check to make sure that you can connect to that data source and you're returning the information you expect in the format you expected. And then finally, we're just going to hit the Next Step button, and that'll take us through our regular Publish API from Portal Wizard that just allows you to put in a name for this API, put in a version for it, and automatically, as I said, automatically generate that WADL file, and then go ahead and configure this on the proxy and add any notes you want. Once you save it, we'll then generate that API and that interactive doc on the fly for you. Now, as I also mentioned, once I publish that API, what we're doing now is we've created a new top-level entry called APIs and Plans that gives you access to an API catalog. So as soon as you publish that API, as long as it's a public API, it'll show up here in our APIs list. If it's a private API, we will hide it, unless the developer actually has access to it, in which case it will be shown here. We're also collecting a little bit of metadata this time around. So in that API, Publish API from Portal Wizard, we'll actually ask for the type of authentication method you're using, as well as the type of API you're publishing as well. So you can fill in those details, and they'll appear here as metadata within the API catalog, just to give your developers a better idea of what they're looking at when they're looking at the APIs. Also, on the Notes tab in the Publish API from Portal Wizard, you can put in a public description, and that public description will appear here as well. So giving your customers, giving your developers a little bit more of a clue as to what they're looking at when they see an entry like Acme Warehouse. What does that API actually provide? What is the authentication level I'm looking at? What kind of API am I exposing here? Is it REST? Is it SOAP? Is it something else? And is it currently enabled? Is it currently deprecated? Is it currently disabled? It gives them a quick way of understanding what how it's being exposed as well. And if you've got automatic or the interactive doc created for it, there will be a highlighted entry in that API name, and they'll be able to click on that name and link immediately to the interactive doc. They can read through that doc, and if they're logged in, they can actually interact with it, with that back-end API directly to understand more about it. So that's a great way to get your developers understanding very quickly what's available in your APIs, or do a very quick search on the page just using a Control-F to search for a specific API name or specific type to be able to get there and understand what's going on with your APIs. But we also have a Plans tab as well. So if I'm a new registrant or a new developer and I'm just coming in to browse through, I might want to understand what kind of plans are available to me as well. So on the plans, you can see you've got a silver, platinum, gold listed here. If I click on that Learn More button, it'll actually tell me which APIs are included in the silver plan, or which are included in the platinum plan or gold plan. And it tells me my quota and rate limit, but it also tells me that with greater quota and greater rate limit, I probably have to pay greater fees as well. So those monetization details are all provided within the plans catalog. If monetization is not turned on for your portal, and monetization is a very simple switch in the comp properties file, if it's not turned on, then those columns will not show up in the plans details. You'll just see the quota and the rate limit listed here. So finally, we'll talk a little bit about localization. The localization that we provided in Portal 3.0 is to be able to take all of the developer-facing strings. So if I was logged in as a developer, what would I see? All of those developer-facing strings are now concatenated into 4 separate files. If you take those 4 files, export them to your translator, have them do a one-for-one exchange of those strings for whatever language you're in, you can then re-import those and publish them, and your portal will then show up in that language. You can see a very bad translation here by me through Google Translate to take the API Explorer, for example, and make it available in French. That's the kind of thing you can do, but be aware that you'll be translating your entire portal, the developer-facing aspect of it, not the administrative side, just the developer-facing aspect, all of that UI will be translated into one language. So this is a stepping stone whereby we get to a multilingual portal whereby your developers can come in and select their language of choice. So you'll be able to translate these strings into multiple languages, and the developer will have their choice as to what they want to view the portal in, what language they want to view the portal in. That's going to take us a little bit more work. You won't see that until probably the end of next year, but that's coming up. This is sort of stepping stone number one, being able to concatenate all those strings in a few files to make it very simple for translation purposes. And then finally, the other big value prop we're offering here is single sign-on. So the ability for many of our customers who already have a developer community already created, and typically that is on some other portal, that is their developer community, and typically they allow their developers to log in through that portal, through that community portal, and then access whatever resources they might have made available for that developer community. The API developer portal being just one of those resources that their developer community can access. So if I've logged in through that community portal and I then see a list of things I can access, I can click on a link. That link will then take me and log me in directly to the API portal where I can begin my work. Under the hood, what's happening is we're using a SAML token. So the SAML token will be vetted through the gateway, which will query back to your SSO system, give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, understand the role of this person. We can use this system to log in both the administrative side as well as the developer side. And if I understand the role from the attributes on the SAML token correctly, then I can log them in to the appropriate dashboard. In this case, the administrator is actually logging in through the SSO system and being logged into their dashboard. Like I say, it can also be used with your developer community, so the org admin, based on the attributes within the SAML token, would then be shown their dashboard and logged in through the SSO system as well. Upgrade. So you guys can download the upgrade package. We made it available on November the 28th. That is available now under layer7.com/support. And you just need to log into your customer portal. You'll find there the release notes, technical docs, everything is all packaged up for you along with the scripts and the actual upgrade process as well, the upgrade guide. So log into your portal and download those. Once you have them, it's a fairly straightforward way to get the upgrade done. You want to always start on the gateway. So if you've got an earlier gateway, 7.x gateway or 6.x gateway, those are no longer supported with API Portal 3.0. 3.0 will only support the 8.x generation of gateways. So 8.0, 8.1, and 8.2, which are currently available, are all supported. You've got to upgrade that API gateway from a previous version to 8.x, or if you're already running an 8.0, 8.1, or 8.2, what we need to do is upgrade the integration components that are on the gateway to make it work with 3.0. Very simple, just log in and upload or replace the existing integration components with what you've got in the new package that's been given to you. Portal 2.6 is a fairly straightforward upgrade. For those of you that have done the 2.5 to 2.6 upgrade, it looks very, very similar. It's an executable. You go ahead and run that, and it'll go through and update a number of components. You then have to log into the portal and upload a CMS package. That patch then needs to get applied, wait for a few minutes to get applied, and you're done. So fairly straightforward on the portal side as well. The use of scripts, the use of patches, very, very quick and easy to get that done. So it should not be a headache, should be fairly straightforward for you to make that migration move. Once you've done that, please realize that by default, monetization has been turned off. You will need to log into the portal or into the CMS as an administrator and go to the conf properties section to update the properties.xml file if you want to turn monetization on. Otherwise, you won't see the revenue planner, you won't see the monetization components in the API plans and catalog. Those will all be turned off by default. And so finally, Q&A. If you've got some questions, I will bring up my chat window here and see if I can take your questions at this point in time.
Thank you, Dana. As a reminder, if you have a question, use the Q&A panel so that everyone can see your question and Dana can answer it. Thank you.
I have a question here from Laura Williams. Will metrics aggregation be part of Release 3.0? So we have a way of doing metrics aggregation. Currently, it is a PS implementation whereby all of the metrics across multiple clusters can be aggregated into a single report, so you can report across multiple clusters. We actually ship those scripts as part of Portal 3.0, so you will find them in a directory. I can't remember the directory name off the top of my head, but it should be fairly obvious when you download the package and have a look at it. We still recommend that you use PS to help you implement those scripts, but they are provided out of the box. So those of you that have good scripting capabilities, good policy capabilities on the gateway should be able to implement that as well. I've got some more questions here. Any significant deployment changes from Rakesh Ray? Deployment changes, as I just mentioned, we now support the multiple clusters, so you can deploy one single portal with multiple clusters that may be in, different locations, US East, US West, EMEA, AJP, or they might be multiple clusters across dev, test, and production. So you can go ahead and deploy those now. That would be one deployment change. Otherwise, all we've done is try to make the scripting much easier, much simpler for you so that your original deployments can be much more streamlined. No significant deployment changes beyond that. Ryan Allen asks, in version 3.0, will multi-language support be included? So Portal 3.0 includes the ability to localize in one language. So your portal can be English, or it can be French, or it can be Japanese. It can be any one language, and we support single byte characters, double byte characters. Any one language can be supported. As I mentioned, multilingual is something we want to get to. So that would be the ability for a developer to choose what language to display the portal in. So you would have the ability to create translations of those files in multiple languages. That does not exist in Portal 3.0. There needs to be some work done on our side, and it's quite extensive work, so you probably won't see it soon, but hopefully by the end of next year, we will have the ability for your developers to choose which language they want to see the portal in. Please remember that the administrative side, the administrative dashboard, and all the CMS will remain in English. It's just for the developers, exposing that portal as a resource in a different language. That's what we're offering here. Dave Howell has a question. Can you talk some about localizing the interactive documentation and the new descriptions in the catalog? Yeah, so depending on how you enter that information. So if you enter that information in English, of course, that'll appear in English within the portal. If you enter that information such as, in the API catalog, if you give that API name a German API name, then it will show up as a German string within the API catalog. So it really is dependent on you as the administrator. You'll be working in an English UI, but all of the text fields where you can enter any information, for instance, about that API can be entered in any language of choice. Like I said, we support single byte and double byte character systems as well. So all of those fields where you could enter in more information about the API for the API catalog, or if you want to just create documentation about your API, go into the CMS and edit that interactive documentation page to add in a header that's a description about your API, for example. You can do that in any language you want. It's already supported under the hood, single byte and double byte character systems. From Marco Todonati. Is there a list of bug fixes included in the release? Yes. So please read the release notes. The release notes are in that download section of the customer support portal. If you go and download that, the release notes tell you, give you a brief overview of what's new. They also talk about known issues, and they talk about a list of bug fixes as well. So please refer to those release notes. From Rakesh Ray again, is the portal supporting multi-tenancy? If I want to deploy different homepage and pictures depending on geographical region. So multi-tenancy is not something that we are addressing in the on-premise portal. The on-premise portal was not built from the ground up to be multi-tenanted. That is not something we are going to be getting to with the on-premise portal. However, we do have a new offering that was actually introduced at the exact same time as Portal 3.0, and that is our SaaS portal. Our SaaS-based portal is running in Amazon. It has been built from the ground up to be a multi-tenanted portal, and that will be our multi-tenanted offering going forward. So if you're looking for a service that runs up in Amazon, that includes many of the same concepts as you have today with your on-premise portal, that runs as a service, that also offers you a gateway and a gateway up in Amazon that you can log into and you can work with and you can create policy for, that is all offered through our new API Developer Portal SaaS version. From Rakesh Ray again, is the portal still using Tomcat and MySQL under the hood? So yes, that is correct. The portal runs as a Tomcat instance, and MySQL is still the database under the hood that we employ. So yes to both. That's what I'm seeing in the Q&A window at this point. If you have any more questions, please type away, or if I haven't explained something, please re-enter, and I will attempt to explain further if there's some other details you guys want.
Dana, will we be making the slides available to the community after the presentation?
Absolutely. We can put that up on the community, allow that to be downloaded.
Okay. I will post that with the replay later today.
Okay.
We put a quick poll up here to rate the value of the topic today. So if you could take a moment to participate in that, we'd appreciate it. And if you haven't gone over to the community to take the product survey, it only takes 2 to 3 minutes to fill it out, and we'd appreciate your feedback. So if we don't have any more questions, I guess that means we can wrap it up today. Thank you, Dana, for presenting, and thank you, everybody, for joining. This concludes the webcast.